WordPress 7 is here, and if you've seen any headlines about it, you've probably seen two things mentioned: AI and a cleaner WordPress dashboard. And yes, these are real parts of this update. But if your business website is built with Elementor, Divi, or any other page builder, the more useful question is, what does WordPress 7 actually change for my website? There's a big difference between a feature being added to WordPress and that feature immediately changing how your business website works. For example, WordPress 7 introduces a new AI infrastructure. That sounds huge, but for most business owners, that does not mean you suddenly open your website and get a full ChatGPT style assistant that redesigns your website for you. It is more like WordPress adding new wiring inside the building. You may not touch that wiring directly today, but over time it gives plugin developers, theme developers, and website teams a more consistent way to build AI-powered features into WordPress. So in this video, we're going to cut through the hype and look at WordPress 7 from the perspective that actually matters to millions of Elementor users and Pronto clients. Let's start with the biggest headline, AI. WordPress 7 introduces what is essentially a native AI foundation inside WordPress. That sounds technical, so here's the simple version. Before this, if different plugins wanted to add AI features, each plugin could handle things in its own way. One plugin might connect to OpenAI, another plugin might connect to Google or Anthropic in a completely different way. Another might store settings somewhere else, another might have its own interface. That can work, but it can also become messy. WordPress 7 starts to create a more central system for this. Think of it like adding a standard electrical panel to a building. The electrical panel does not decide what appliances you use. It does not automatically install your fridge, your lights, your oven, and your air conditioner. But it gives everything a safer, more organized place to connect. That is roughly what the new AI layer is trying to do for WordPress. It gives plugins and developers a more standard way to connect WordPress to AI providers such as OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google. Instead of every plugin inventing its own separate AI setup, WordPress is starting to provide the shared foundation. Now, here's the important part for business owners. This does not mean your Elementor website suddenly changes overnight. If you use Elementor to edit your pages, you will still mostly use Elementor to edit those pages. Elementor already has some AI features inside its own editor, such as helping rewrite text or generate custom CSS. But those features are part of the Elementor's own experience. WordPress 7's AI update is more foundational. It matters because it shows where WordPress is going, more so than an immediate impact on how you'll use your website every day. There is also one important thing that WordPress 7 does not include: real-time collaboration. That was one of the more exciting ideas that people expected from this phase of WordPress development. The idea would be to allow multiple people working together inside WordPress in a more Google Docs style way. For whatever reason, this was removed from WordPress 7 before launch. And while that might sound disappointing, it was probably the right call. Real-time collaboration sounds simple from the outside, but inside a platform like WordPress, it is complicated. You have different users, different permissions, different plugins, different hosting environments, different editors, different post types, and different ways data can be saved. So real-time collaboration being delayed is disappointing if you were waiting for it. But for business owners using Elementor, this is probably not the biggest practical loss. Most Elementor-based business websites are not being edited like live Google Docs by 5 people at once. The bigger practical concern is whether updates are stable, whether the website keeps working properly, and whether the editing experience remains reliable. Now let's talk about what many owners may actually notice first: the WordPress admin. WordPress 7 includes cleaner, a more modern backend experience. This is not a complete reinvention of WordPress. If you already know where pages, posts, media, plugins, and settings live, you should not feel lost. But the experience is getting more polished. The dashboard feels a little more modern. Some screens feel smoother as you move between them. There are visual improvements, spacing improvements, and changes that make the backend feel more like a modern web app rather than an older admin panel. For business owners and marketing teams, this matters because the WordPress backend is where a lot of small tasks happen. You may not be redesigning pages every day, but you might be logging in. Update blog posts, check form submissions, review pages, upload images, manage users, update plugin settings, review site content. So even if the update does not change your public-facing website, it can change the experience of managing the website. That said, if your site is built with Elementor, many of your page design tasks will still happen inside Elementor. For example, there are new or improved blocks like breadcrumbs, headings, icons, and gallery lightbox improvements. There are also more design controls, including block level custom CSS and responsive visibility controls. In other words, WordPress is making the native editor more capable. That is good for the WordPress ecosystem overall. It means websites built directly with the block editor can now do more without needing extra plugins for every feature. For example, if WordPress includes a native breadcrumbs block, some sites may not need a separate plugin just to show breadcrumbs. If WordPress includes icon blocks, some sites might not need an extra icon plugin for simple design elements. If gallery lightbox behavior improves natively, some sites will rely less on third-party gallery tools. That matters because fewer unnecessary plugins can mean fewer things to maintain, fewer compatibility risks, and potentially a lighter website. But if your key pages are built in Elementor, you may already handle many of these things inside Elementor or Elementor add-ons. Elementor already has its own widgets, its own responsive controls, its own design settings, and its own way of building page layouts. So if you're an Elementor site owner, the question you should ask yourself is whether this changes the way you actually build your website. Sometimes the answer will be no. If your blog posts use the block editor, these updates may help your content team. If your theme templates use native WordPress blocks, some of these updates may matter. If your site is mostly Elementor pages with Elementor widgets, those block-specific updates may not affect your day-to-day editing very much. So this is one of the main reasons we do not want to overhype WordPress 7 for Elementor users. It is a meaningful WordPress update, but not every WordPress feature changes the Elementor experience. Now let's talk about the part that matters most for many business websites, updates and compatibility. When WordPress releases major versions like 7, it is not just changing one small plugin, it is updating the core software your website runs on. That does not mean you should be afraid of updating. Keeping WordPress updated is important for security, performance, and long-term reliability. But it does not mean you should not treat every major update like clicking update on a phone app. A business website has multiple moving parts. You have website core, you have your theme, you have Elementor, you have Elementor Pro, you may have Elementor add-ons. You may have form plugins, SEO plugins, caching plugins, security plugins, analytics scripts, custom code, and hosting settings. All of those pieces need to keep working together. The safer process is, first, check the hosting environment. Second, test the update on a staging version of the website. Third, check the most important pages and functionality. Fourth, pay attention to anything built with Elementor or third-party Elementor add-ons. Fifth, only then roll the update to the live site. The internal Pronto review flagged this as one of the most important points. Elementor Core may be compatible, but third-party Elementor add-ons are a different matter and need site-by-site checking. This is very important. When people say Elementor works with WordPress 7, that does not automatically mean every Elementor add-on, every custom widget, every form integration, and every plugin on your site has been tested. For business owners, this is where managed WordPress support becomes valuable. Not because updates are scary, but because updates need a process. So what does all this mean if your website uses Elementor? Here is the simple version. First, WordPress 7 does not replace Elementor. If your pages are built with Elementor, you will still use Elementor to edit those pages. Second, the AI features in WordPress 7 are important, but they are mostly foundational right now. Think of them as infrastructure for future AI-powered plugins and workflows, not a complete AI assistant that changes how every business owner edits their website tomorrow. Third, the admin improvements are probably the most visible day-to-day change. If you log into WordPress, things may feel a little cleaner and more modern. That is good, but it should not dramatically change your workflow if you mainly edit pages in Elementor. Fourth, some of the new block editor features are useful, especially for posts, native WordPress templates, or block-based websites, but they may not matter for pages built entirely in Elementor. Fifth, the maintenance matters a lot. This is a bigger than usual update under the hood, so Elementor sites should be tested carefully before updating live, especially if they rely on third-party Elementor add-ons or older plugins. But it is also not a magical AI transformation for Elementor site owners. It is a foundation update, and foundation updates matter because they shape where WordPress is going next. The final takeaway is this: WordPress 7 is a meaningful update, but the most important parts are not necessarily the flashiest parts. The AI foundation matters because it shows where WordPress is going. The admin improvements matter because they make the backend feel more modern. The block editor improvements matter for sites that rely on native WordPress editing. But if your website is built with Elementor, the practical question is not whether WordPress 7 has exciting new features. The practical question is whether your site can update safely, keep working properly, and take advantage of the useful changes over time. This is why our recommendation is not to ignore WordPress 7, and it is not to rush to update immediately. The recommendation is understand what matters, test carefully, and roll it out properly. If your website is managed by Pronto, this is the kind of update we pay close attention to. Not just what changed in WordPress, but how those changes affect the real websites businesses depend on every day. If you want practical WordPress advice without the hype, consider subscribing. We publish videos to help business owners make better decisions about their websites.